in the discovery of the self-love journey, we will and we do come to discover that we always loved ourselves. We always have that. It's just how far we are from truly experiencing that in the moment has everything to do with how much we're holding on to. And so it's just important to understand that in what I'm standing in today, now that I know what I know, I recognize that I always loved myself. I always lived my life from a place of self-love. And what I mean by that is that the intention was always love. So it always started with love. However, naturally, this is kind of something that everyone goes through. We lose ourselves in the process based on the traumas and the things that we go through in life. And we start to lose our alignment to the truth that we are loved and we are loved. And we lose that alignment. And then the whole point is really then to find ourselves again so that we can experience this love from like a conscious place, from a place of gratitude and consciousness and intentionality. And so for myself, when I started to awaken to who I was, there were things about myself that I saw, identities that were shameful or that I didn't like seeing. And instead of making myself wrong for it, I knew exactly where it came from and why it was there. I didn't even realize it was there until I saw it. And so I went through a phase of humility where I was able just to accept it, understand it deeply and where it came from, have self-compassion, then forgiveness, self-forgiveness, and then just a sense of gratitude for that discovery that ultimately had me more free and experiencing an even deeper sense of self-love. But to have gotten to that point, I needed to love myself through what I experienced. And so, so really it's just that ultimately when I went through an experience that was part of my calling, and maybe we'll talk about it later, that really transformed my life, I started to awaken to my shadows, if you will. I loved myself through it. And on the other side, I experienced a greater love. But there was never a point where I didn't love myself, where I didn't share that. It was just more a matter of I didn't know what I didn't know. Yeah. And then how I came to that self-love is that I started to help other people as a personal trainer. I was an athlete all my life. And in working as a personal trainer and starting to help people transform physically, it was obvious that what we were harboring and holding on to physically was limited, and emotionally and mentally and just through our experiences, we were harboring it in our bodies that I couldn't even achieve the physical goals with my clients. It was clear that there was the whole being needed to be freed, if you will, and needed to be trained. And through conversations, through training my clients, I started to realize that as they got comfortable and they started to trust the space that I cultivated, that left them feeling safe, and they started to be more vulnerable and share themselves, I noticed that as they shared themselves, it was more about a perspective and how they were dealing with life, whether in any aspect of life, whether it was how they felt about themselves or maybe their marriage or their relationships or stuff like that. And as they started to share with me, I started to notice a contrast in putting myself in the situation and how I would deal with it, and really hearing how they were kind of going through it. And that gap exposed to me something that I could have offered as a suggestion. And what started to happen was, as my clients opened up to me, and simply just through the experience they had in the relationship that was contrasting to what they may have experienced even within their own relationship with themselves, it gave them the space to really get to know a different part of them. And it allowed me to really ultimately extrapolate a common trend, if you will, that I noticed, was that as most people start to discover parts of themselves and to see parts of their identity, in contrast to how I found myself going through it, I noticed that most people then would look at it and it would actually put them on a downward negative spiral. It made them feel more shameful, more regretful, more self-hate, more depression, more disempowered. And I started to understand when I asked them, what was it that how had them experience that? It really came from a thought process in what they were making it mean and how they defined themselves and where they were seeing themselves, um, in life, and how they viewed themselves in the world. And it really, it just kind of came about through conversations and working with my clients, until I worked with enough of people's challenges in the way that they worked and respond to life, that I was able to extrapolate, theories of what is self-love, what are the 6 steps to self-love, so that we can understand the process as we're going through it, and created a self-love workshop. And it just kind of started to evolve as my clients were able to just offer me their vulnerability, while I was able to, again, being able to distinguish the difference in the gap by using their story and meeting them where they're at, but bringing them to what I was standing in through the work that I'd done for myself, and develop steps for those who are experiencing what I found to be majority of people experiencing fear and a lack of courage to really work through to a greater love. Because it's not just as simple as like, love yourself and that's it, right? It takes courage, and it takes love ultimately, right?